Hello, everyone, and welcome to our sixth lightning round question. The question is written like this. It says, who does Romans chapter 1 and verse 32 include? Is it the sinner and anyone who is aware of that sin, or just the people that openly approve of the sin? So let me read Romans 1:32. It says, who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. So is it the sinner and anyone who's aware of that sin, or just the people that openly approve of the sin who are, I guess, guilty of the actual sin that's taking place? That's the question, and it's Kurt's turn to answer the lightning round question.
Okay, and the answer to that question is yes. So we want to go ahead and thank you. Thank the person who sent that question. No, I shouldn't be facetious, but really the answer is yes. When you look at the context, beginning back in verse 18, Paul gives us a representative list of sins. This is not the only sins that a person could commit, but they were popular sins in the day and represent the lust of the flesh and what have you. They are committed by those who choose to rebel against God. And Paul describes their character in this context. For example, in verse 18, he points out that they suppress the truth in unrighteousness. When you look at verse 21, they become futile in their hearts because even though they knew God, they don't glorify him as God. So they know God and they know about him, but they're not mindful of him at all. Paul goes on and points that out. They exchanged the truth of God for the lie. So this is a choice. They are faced with a choice, the truth or the lie, and they exchanged the truth for the lie. So it is a volitional act. Verse 28, they don't like to retain God in their knowledge. And really, to me, that's kind of the bottom line. They don't want to even think about God. He's not in the picture. Otherwise, they might become concerned about what they're doing, but they have made their choice, and so God is forced out of the picture. So when we get down to verse 32, in talking to the Romans about this group of people, these people in sin, that they have done this before God. Even though they know him, they've rejected him, they've rebelled against him, they've chosen the lie over his truth, and so Paul concludes the chapter by pointing out that they know the righteous judgment of God. In other words, they are aware of God's judgment and they're aware of the consequences of their sin, because he goes that those who practice such things are deserving of death. So they know this is what is amazing. So they're aware of their sin, they're aware of its consequences. Still, they both do those sins themselves and they approve of others who do them, which is natural. Misery loves company, or sin loves company in this case. You're always going to want to be around people that are doing the sin you're involved in, because then you can mutually encourage each other and justify yourselves. So what Paul is saying here is that those who do the sins, those who commit sin, and those who approve of those who practice the sins are deserving of death. And they know that that's the case because they know the judgment of God. So that's why I answered the question, yes, because the judgment comes upon those not only actively engaged in the sin, but they also approve of everyone else who's doing it around them too.
Yeah, you did a good job of backing up and looking at the context and all that's being said about this group and how they behave and what their thoughts are. Because for me, I'm like you. I would have said yes. That you can't sit there and watch and approve of someone who's in sin and say, "Oh, I wasn't any part of that." Well, you sure didn't try to stop it. So that's usually where my mind goes. But you did a good job of showing that there's a condition here that is laid out and clearly explained by the Apostle Paul, who's inspired by the Holy Spirit. Throughout that text, 3 times it says that God either gave them up or gave them over to their vile passions.
Yes.
So there's a letting go of God because they are determined to continue to commit these sins. So again, for me, if I'm watching someone who's just determined to live in sin, I have no place in their life to say, well, it's okay. You're going to be okay. That you can keep doing that, or I just can't condone it or approve of that, because if and when I do, I'm guilty of the same thing.
Exactly. And I'm glad you pointed that out, God's reaction to this. When they let go of God, there will come a point when he lets go of them. And that's a scary situation to be in.
Yeah.
But if that's your choice, and I want to emphasize that in this passage, they are exercising a choice. Sin's always a choice. That old line, well, the devil made me do it, that's a nice little self-deception. He doesn't make us do anything. He encourages us to make the wrong choice, but it is our choice. God lays it before us. We make the choice, and now the consequences are going to come.
Yeah, and I think 2 Thessalonians helps with that as well, that they would believe the lie because they did not love the truth.
Exactly.
So we got the same problem there. So your answer is?
Yes.